there's a question that you should have as time goes on, that I'm dealing with, that I have dealt with, and that I've heard from other people when I've explained to them this Torah. Because Rav Nachman makes it very clear, even though the Baal Shem Tov is the one who really originated this, but Rabbi Nachman he's hammering it home all the time. There is nothing that's happening unless Hashem wants it to. That's it. Whatever Hashem wants to happen, happens. Always. There's never been a case in the past that wasn't the case. There's never going to be a case in the future that wasn't the case. And it's the case right now. So then the obvious question is, why am I praying then? Everybody think about that for a second. If Hashem is the one who's doing everything, and he's always going to do everything, and everything he does is for the best, then why am I even praying? So that's one question. Then you have another question. The question is amongst people who don't believe that Hashem answers your prayers, or that Hashem doesn't want to answer your prayers. So this is the other side, that you don't even feel like it works. That if I go do it in a field every day for an hour, okay, yeah, right, like my life is going to change because of that. That my job is going to change, and my relationship is going to change, my inner spiritual world is going to change, and all of these different elements. So Nachman says, yes, that's all going to change. Every single part of it. When you do hipodadut, when you talk to Hashem every day, when you're in tefillah, and it's really based on the Arizal and the Baal Shem Tov. But many of us don't feel like that. We don't feel like it's possible that I can put my hishtadlut, I can put my efforts, instead of in the physical world, I can take those efforts and place them in my prayer and actually have a greater result. That doesn't make sense. So that's the other problem that we're dealing with. These two problems. I can't see anybody. I wish someone would show me their face. I hate talking to myself. Can somebody show me their face just so I don't look like I'm talking to myself? Thank you, Benny. Appreciate it so much. I'm just going to look at you the whole class. Alan, you also look good. Charles, looking good. Alexander, next to the kotel. Baruch Hashem. Very nice. So,
but Rabbi, when you teach, you are talking to yourself too. You know, it's normal. It's normal. we talk to ourselves.
No, I know that. Rav Nachman speaks a lot about how important it is that the teacher looks at his students and the student looks at his teacher. We're not able to do that now because of Zoom sometimes. People have the option to kind of check out of that mode. But when we get to those tours, we're going to see how important it is that we see each other. Besides how good looking all of you are. So now, we're saying like this. We have these two questions. You have the person who we're going to say is far to the left, not in the left politically, but the left spiritually, thinking that I have to go physically do things to make things happen. And if you tell me otherwise, brother man, as they'd say where I live now, you're insane. How are you going to tell me I can work 1 hour less at work and make more than I'm making right now by going into a field and screaming to Hashem? That doesn't make any sense. That's not what they taught me in college. That's not what my parents taught me, right? So that doesn't make any sense. And now let's say you take more time than that. Let's say you shrink your workday to 6 hours instead of 14 hours or whatever everybody else is working. And I'm now going to spend 2 hours in the field talking to Hashem. And that part of that, I'm singing and I'm dancing and I'm clapping, and maybe only for a half an hour I'm talking. So that's just negligent. You're just not being responsible at that point. This is what the world would teach you. So that's called, according to Kabbalah, that's called being towards the left. This is connected to the spiritual quality or klipa that's called Esav. Esav is connected very deeply to the physical world. So the part of each of us that doesn't actually believe that putting our efforts in spirituality can actually make an impact in our physical life, that's called the klipa of Esav, according to Kabbalah. And that's the reason he gave his birthright over to Yaakov, because Yaakov was interested in spirituality, and Esav didn't believe in Hashem. He didn't believe in Olam Haba. He didn't believe in Rabbi Nachman. Okay? So now, let's go to the other side, like we just said. The right side spiritually. The right side spiritually is to think that since Hashem is doing everything, and I'm Hashem holding by place, like Rabbi Nachman says, that I know everything Hashem does is for my best. I have internalized this so much Gamzu Tova, everything's good, everything's groovy. So now the question is, why even pray? Why am I praying? If Rabbi Nachman's right, that everything is for the absolute best, everything is to bring me closer to him, and Hashem is everywhere, so why am I praying for anything? Whatever's going to happen is the best. That is also a klipa. That's called the klipa of Yishmael. Meaning that you have no responsibilities anymore. Now, you might, if you're keen enough and you have enough historical education,
Background.
Yeah, you would know that this has actually reflected itself in the Western world as we are today, in terms of Esav, that nobody believes in Hashem, right? And therefore crazy to go pray. And that's obviously influenced anybody who grew up in America, me being one of those people, how we're taught by our parents, how we're taught by society, how we're taught in school, that it doesn't make any sense at all to pray to something that you can't see, okay? That's called Esav. Now, in the Brit Milah, which we're actually speaking about the Brit now, there is a law in the Shulchan Aruch that says that when you do the Brit Milah on the 8th day, which is the first mitzvah for a boy, which we're saying the Brit is the key to getting your prayers answered, and it's what makes you a Jew. So there's actually 2 steps to the Brit Milah. You have to remove the Milah, that is the external foreskin, that is obvious, that is thick, that is coarse. You have to remove that. Most people know that, okay? Now you would think if you got rid of that, you're good to go. So in Kabbalah, Rav Natan explains that's called Esav, the external foreskin. Meaning, this is the part of you that's so connected to physicality that it's blocking your ability to believe that Hashem could do something for you through your spiritual efforts. That's called Esav. We need to knock him off, okay? And until you do, so to speak, even though you might have a physical Brit Milah, you have not experienced a spiritual Brit Milah, which we're saying is the key to getting your prayers answered. Okay, good. So let's say you get to the point you knock Esav off, which takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of prayer. It takes a lot of attachment to Rav Nachman. It takes a lot of learning his Torah. It takes a lot of effort, falling and getting back up. Now, let's say you do. So you think you're good to go now. You have the Brit. However, you don't have one klipa over the corona. The head of your part is called the corona, which is very interesting, considering what we're dealing with nowadays. And we're saying that you have to get rid of the foreskin, but the Shulchan Aruch has a very interesting last little point. It says there's also something called a priya, that you have a translucent part of the skin on top of the corona, on top of the crown, that you could see right through it. So it looks like it's part of the actual, and you can't remove it. However, it's also a layer of klipa. And the Shulchan Aruch says if you don't remove that, in addition to the Milah, it's as if you didn't even do the Brit Milah to begin with. Now that is unbelievable. You remove the entire Milah. Anyone who sees is going to say, you're Jewish. What are you talking about? But you have something that looks just like the real thing right over it, and it's also a klipa. It's just very subtle. You have to remove that also. Spiritually, how does that reflect in our life? If Esav is this connection to physicality that's blocking our ability to feel that Hashem can do anything for us, now we're going to remove that and we believe Hashem does everything for us. So now why am I going to pray? That's called Yishmael. That is the Priya. You have to remove that also. When you remove that as well, and you still pray even though you know that Hashem does everything, why are you praying? Because Hashem wants you to. That's why. You're not doing it because you have to. You're doing it because Hashem wants you to. Hashem wants you to open your mouth and ask for a change in your life for good. And Hashem wants to change what he was doing for you according to your will. That was his dream. That Hashem could make co-creators with him, that they can get to a level that they are praying for the right things and for the right reasons. And I can, so to speak, give over the Bria, the creation, to them and let them experience what it's like to be a creator. That's called mishpat. That's called justice. That's called praying with mishpat. When you have obtained this level, that you realize 100% Hashem is with you. Everything he does is for your good, okay? And it's worth praying because you have detached yourself from just superficiality or vanity in your life. And also, you're praying even though you know that Hashem does everything. You're still praying. That's called justice. That's called praying with justice. And when you pray with that, that's called using your sword properly. Now the question we have is, how do you get to this point? This sounds like a very high level. I might not even have removed any of the foreskin from my Brit, not the physicality, and not, I believe so much, why even pray? Who gets to even that point? So now we need to understand, how do we get to do both of those things and to have this balance and go pray with that balance, because that's the key to getting your prayers answered in a way that's good for you and everyone around you. So now Rav Nachman says, how do you get this quality of mishpat? Ayadei tzedakah, through tzedakah. So this is very important. And Rav Nachman is going to talk about tzedakah just as often as he speaks about the Brit Milah, just as often as he speaks about the Emunah and Hibodedut. He speaks about tzedakah. We're learning for the first time in Likutey Moharan. Why? Because tzedakah, somehow we're going to learn, gives you the ability that when you go to pray, your prayers are not only getting answered, you're also praying with the perfect balance of gratitude, or let's say submission to the fact that Hashem is the one who's doing everything. And at the same time, with that holy chutzpah, to bang the table and to scream and cry to Hashem for a change. Somehow by giving tzedakah, you're able to acquire this balance that you need. Okay? Why? Because in giving tzedakah, in giving money that is yours, that you made, you embrace this attribute of mishpat. So what's the reason for that? Kamoshe Katuv, we have a pasuk, and the pasuk says, Tikat Hashem asau mishpatav. He executed the mishpat. He executed the tzidkat, the tzedakah of Hashem, umishpatav, and his mishpatim. So what is this talking about? This is about Moshe Rabbeinu. That when Moshe saw the Jewish people were falling constantly, what did he do? He went to Hashem, and even though he knew that the Jewish people had messed up, he looked for the good in each and every one of them, and he screamed to Hashem to help them. And the Torah says he did the tzedakah of Hashem. What does that mean, he did the tzedakah of Hashem? What does that mean, he did justice? That doesn't sound like justice. When we think of justice, especially if we grew up in a family or a culture, when we think that justice means ruling with an iron fist, this is not a Jewish, doesn't rule. Look up the laws of being a judge. Look up the Gemaras that have to do with being a judge. You have to have this wonderful balance between empathy and conviction to the truth. And you have to balance both of those things. Sometimes a person does the right thing and you give him reward. That's great. Sometimes a person doesn't do the right thing and you would think you give him punishment. And that's the way that we think of Hashem. But the Torah teaches not like that. And Rav Nachman teaches not like that. Why? Because a good judge sees what are this person's circumstances. I went to social work school, and they used to teach us all the time how important it is. What are his strengths and what are his risk factors? Meaning you have a person, he comes in, let's say he has an addiction to drugs. Let's say he also has a history of stealing. Let's say he also has a history of depression. So you think to yourself, and he has a substance abuse problem. it's very easy to look at this person and say to himself, you're not trying hard enough. You deserve whatever's happening to you. Because I would never do that. You might think to yourself, how would I ever get to a place that I'm stealing other people's money? Even if I get to the lowest place, I would never steal anybody's stuff. But that's where you're holding. This person, if you want to think about it, came from a completely impoverished family. His parents were abusive. They were drug addicts. They used to beat him. They sexually abused him. Okay? And he grew up in a neighborhood that he was never taught work ethic. He grew up in a neighborhood that he wasn't taught values. So now you have a person like that, and he's following through with these errors that you think to yourself, I would never do these things. Yeah, because you didn't grow up like him. And now you might say, well, that's a very liberal way of thinking. But the Torah says it's actually a very true way of thinking. There are circumstances. There are circumstances that change the point of free will. Sometimes that person is not coming from a place of da'at. He doesn't have the knowledge necessary yet to make good choices. And Hashem judges him accordingly. For instance, people in our generation, that they grow up and their parents are not holding by anything spiritual, and so they're just taught whatever society is teaching them. Most major poskim consider them kidnapped from birth, according to halakha. They're not judged for anything that they did. And yet we look at the majority of those secular people, or many people do, and they say they're not doing this, and they don't want to do this, and they don't want to take on themselves this, and they're completely irresponsible, and yeah, but Hashem doesn't judge them like that. So how do we judge them like that? How are we so arrogant to say, you know what, I know better. I know this person's circumstances. Even though the Gemara says clearly, unless you're in a person's shoes, you can, unless you're in a person's situation, you can never judge. But we do it anyway. So now, Rav Nachman's going to say something amazing. He says like this. Why was Moshe Rabbeinu banging the table for the Jewish people? Because on paper, they should get whatever Hashem has coming to them. But Moshe Rabbeinu understood where they were holding. And that even though they fell, there's so much good inside of them. And to focus on that and not in the fall. And when he went to go pray to Hashem, he put it all on Hashem. And to strengthen his Tzedakah Hashem, he did it. He achieved the highest level of righteousness of Hashem by praying for people who did the wrong thing. What's the reason? Then it says, Moshe Katuv, Mishpat Tzedakah b'Yaakov. Mishpat and Tzedakah in Yaakov. So this is actually speaking towards the times of Mashiach. That the Mashiach is going to have both the quality of Mishpat, of justice, and Tzedakah. Now we're learning the reason why. Because Mashiach, who Moshe Rabbeinu, so now you can understand why Rav Nachman is bringing both these different pasukim to say the same thing, because whatever applied to Moshe is going to apply to Mashiach in the end. That his main weapon is tefillah, and he's going to be using it to pray for Klal Yisrael, and in a way that maybe you would not think is just. But according to Hashem, it is the highest level of justice. How does he get to the point that he's able to be so certain that when he bangs the table for the Jewish people, and he puts himself on the line and says, you want to erase the Jewish people? Erase me from your Torah. What if the Jewish people, mamish, were just not doing what Hashem told them to do? And Moshe is toiling every single day to try and do the best he can, and they're not. Why would Moshe, is that even responsible for him to say, erase me from the Torah? Why not just start through him? Like Hashem said he wanted to. And the answer is because the greatest justice is to lower yourself for the sake of someone else. According to the Torah. And Mashiach, as the reincarnation of Moshe Rabbeinu, that even though he didn't get to take us into the land of Israel when he was Moshe, he will get to take us into the land of Israel when he's David. And he is going to be using his sword of tefillah.
Is it only me or Rabbi, you're cutting out in and out? Like,
ruined.
I don't know, your reception
Is that everybody?
It's only me? Oh,
your
only me? Okay. Forget
is it,
that. Sorry.
Is it cutting out for everyone?
Okay.
fine.
Can anyone else tell me? Is it cutting out for anyone else?
No, Rabbi, we're good, Rabbi. We're good.
Okay.
Okay.
Fine. Okay. Keep going. Sorry. I'll get to a better area. Sorry.
No. So he's going to be using his sense of justice, which means he is going to be praying for the impoverished. He is going to be praying for the downtrodden. And even though it looks like on paper, he shouldn't be. He is only going to see the good in them. And he's going to bring that back to Hashem. And that's the highest level of justice. Now let's see where this is, because that's a beautiful concept, but is that even rooted in the Torah? Where do we see that? Ki tzedakah hu al yedei mishpat. Because what is justice? What is justice? When you think of justice, you think you did this and you get this. So the Torah teaches that's not justice. You know what justice is? You made a certain amount of money. You think that you earned it. You think you worked for it. You think you went to school for it. You think that you toiled for it and you hustled for it. And now you made a certain amount of money. And you see a poor person on the street. And you see this guy and you think to yourself, wow, this guy's mamish a bum. This guy's drinking every single day here. He's not working. He's not looking like he's trying to do anything. And you don't give him tzedakah. You think that that's just. So the Torah says it's the opposite of justice. Because what's just is that you give him money. Why is that justice? Because the pasuk says, Elokim shofet. Hashem is the judge. Now, what does it say at the end of this pasuk, which describes what it means that he's the judge? Zeh yashpil v'zeh yarim. He lowers this one and he raises this one. Rav Nachman saying that pasuk is not just saying how Hashem happens to be judging people. He's saying that that is justice. When one is lowered and one is raised. Shemarish lazeh umashir lazeh. That this one becomes impoverished and this one becomes wealthy. That's called justice. Ushenoten tzedakah hu b'chinat zeh yashpil. And now Rav Nachman saying that when you give tzedakah, you are becoming a mini Hashem. How is that? Because what Hashem does is he takes a person and he makes him lose money. And he gives that money to another person who doesn't have it. And Rav Nachman is teaching based on that pasuk that Hashem shofet, he lowers this one and he raises that one. That is the quality of justice. That is the essence of justice. So now when you come and you give tzedakah, you are now becoming a microcosm of Hashem in the physical world. Because what are you doing, Rav Nachman says? You are taking money from yourself, meaning you're lowering yourself, you're impoverishing yourself, so to speak, to give to a person who doesn't have. That means that you're making him wealthy or you're lifting him up. So this pasuk of Hashem shofet, zeh yashpil v'zeh yarim, that this one is lowered and this one is raised, you are actually doing that every time you give tzedakah, meaning you're becoming a true judge. And when you become a true judge, Rav Nachman says, now you can pray, not just in a way that gets answered, but you can pray for the right things. And not only can you just pray for the right things, but you can pray in the perfect balance of, I understand that Hashem wants to answer my prayers, but I also understand that Hashem does everything, which is a very hard thing to get a wrap on. I have many students, and I myself have experienced this. In the beginning, you feel like, what's the point of praying? Because Hashem's not going to answer me. Let's say you're able to get past that point. You have the schut to get past that point. You realize that Hashem does listen to you. But then you get to such a level that you say to yourself, why am I even praying if I know Hashem's doing the best? what's the point of even praying? Then you have to get to a harmony and get to the point that you're going to cry and scream to Hashem anyway because he wants you to. That is a very hard middle road to find. And the answer of Nachman says is you can only find it through tzedakah, because the middle road is the concept of justice. And justice means impoverishing yourself and raising up someone else. It's a very beautiful concept. It's a very, very beautiful concept. It's a very deep concept, and it's a very simple concept. When you give tzedakah before you pray, you are making yourself into the epitome of justice in the world. And by fixing the quality of justice, now when you come to pray, we're going to learn in a moment, the words flow right off your tongue. The reason why words are not flowing off your tongue and you're having a hard time speaking is either because you're Pagama Brit, or let's say you're not Pagama Brit. Then it's because there is a blemish in the quality of justice, meaning that you are not lowering yourself in order to raise somebody else up. Now, the physical mitzvah that this is encompassed in is tzedakah. But Rav Natan says the essence of this whole thing that Rav Nachman's teaching is it's really about humility. Because when you give a person your money, you're saying, this is not my money. This is Hashem's money. And you're giving it to a person who seemingly on paper looks like he didn't work for it, or he didn't try as hard as you for it. And you're giving him anyway, and you're impoverishing yourself to give this person. And the Torah is saying, Rav Nachman's teaching you, this is the essence of justice. And Rav Natan is saying, and within that essence of justice, justice requires humility. And you have to be humble in order to impoverish yourself, in order to enrich someone else. And when you get to a level that you are, so to speak, more concerned with other people than yourself, then you can pray in a way that's not just going to get answered, but that's good for yourself and everyone else. Meaning, to have justice, you need to be selfless. And it's no surprise that according to Kabbalah, that mishpat, this quality of mishpat, which Rav Nachman has connected to Yaakov, so we know according to the Arizal that the soul of Yaakov was actually Moshe Rabbeinu. That this whole story that we learn about Yaakov from the beginning into the end, within Yaakov's physical body, you had actually the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. And that soul is called mishpat, is called justice. What do we know about Moshe Rabbeinu? He was a Nav Me'od. He was not just humble, he was the most humble man that ever lived. Meaning he didn't care about himself at all. He was only concerned with lifting up everyone around him. And now Rav Nachman's teaching, if you want to be able to get to a point that you can pray, not just to get answered, you could do that by being Shmirat Brit. But that doesn't mean that you're praying for the right things. And it doesn't mean you're praying in a way that's easy for you. And it doesn't mean that you're praying in a way that's beneficial for you or anyone around you. To guarantee that, you have to acquire humility. And you do that by giving tzedakah. And because of this, the Shulchan Aruch says, and the Gemara says, that before you come to pray, you should give a little bit, a shtickle of tzedakah. Give a little bit of tzedakah. The Shulchan Aruch says, what if you're praying at home? You should have a little tzedakah box, and you put it in the box before you pray. Now, what's the reason that the Shulchan Aruch is saying it's a good idea to give tzedakah before you pray shacharit, before you pray mincha? Now, obviously, Rav Nachman says to any type of time that you're going to pray, to give tzedakah is beneficial. And obviously, within Rav Nachman's Torah, we know that Bodhidut is a very intense time of prayer. Right, 1 second. So now, he's saying this is the real reason that the Shulchan Aruch is telling you to give tzedakah before you pray. Because the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, was Baki in Kabbalah. And he knew the Arizal's Torah cold. So when he comes to a psak and halacha and the Shulchan Aruch, don't think it's a simple, oh yeah, it's a good idea to give tzedakah before you pray. There is a lot that's going into that, and Rav Nachman's explaining what that is. That when you give tzedakah before you pray, quality of you are in order to enrich the greatest act of justice. Because when we give tzedakah, we think that tzedakah means charity. Tzedakah does not mean charity. Tzedakah comes from the word tzedek. Tzedek, like tzaddik, doesn't mean he's charitable. It means he's right. He's right. To give tzedakah is not a nice thing to do. It's the right thing to do. Why is it the right thing to do? Because it's true. It's the truth. That's why it's called tzedakah. Because it's true. And you should know that. Because for many of us, we grow up thinking, I made mine, go get yours. And the Torah teaches mamash not like that. And Rav Nachman's teaching, if you have that mindset, your prayers are never going to be good for you or anyone around you. Because you're selfish. And if you're selfish, your prayer is answered because you attain Shmirat Brit. But those prayers are not going to be good for you or anyone around you. And the Gemara in Brachot says you should be very careful before you open your mouth, even if you're not selfless. Because then you're actually a big risk to the world than a person who's not even holding in that place. So now, he says, Kadesh yuchal lechalke devra b'mishpat. Why should you give tzedakah before you pray? In order that you should yechalkel divarav b'mishpat. The pasuk that we said before, with David HaMelech, he's saying that he orders his words, his affairs with justice, or with like a sense of discipline, I guess. So the simple meaning is that David was saying that, and we know David refers to, he's going to order his affairs with clarity, justice. Rav Nachman saying, but you can read it another way. Yechalkel, and then it says, but Devarim doesn't have to be affairs, it can be words. Meaning you support your words b'mishpat, when you have this quality of justice. And then then you're able to swing that sword and not strike in the wrong place that you won't miss. You're always going to hit the mark. So again, how does this read now, this pasuk that we're talking about Mashiach, right? The whole Torah is about Mashiach. And we know that each of us has a very deep connection to the soul of Mashiach, learned in the past, that we're all spark souls of that collective soul that's called Mashiach. So therefore, whatever applies to him on a global level applies to us at an individual level. So now the pasuk that says, he orders a mishpat, and now means that because you gave sustenance to someone else, that's the greatest act of justice. And then you have davara, then you have words. Everybody understand? And this is like it says in Baba Batra. Why did Yaakov give the Bachora to Yosef? So Rav Nachman says before why he gave it to Yosef. Shmirat Brit. And why did he take away from Reuven? Because he was Pagama Brit. So we see that the birthright is the concept of the sword of tefillah that gets answered every time. That's the one who is holding by the Brit. However, the Gemara says not like that. The Gemara says, why did Yaakov give it to Yosef? Because he sustained him. Because he provided for him. So now we have a question. What is it? Was Yosef Shmirat Brit? Or did he provide for Yaakov? And the Gemara goes to bring the analogy. What was that whole relationship with Yosef and Yaakov like? Yosef went down to Mitzrayim. Yosef struggled and suffered tremendously. Yosef became the Tzaddik Yisod Olam. Yaakov comes down with his children. Yaakov has no food, nothing to eat, no sustenance, no physical or spiritual sustenance. You can offer from the Tzaddik. And now all of a sudden, Yosef is providing for him. And what they explain is, in the Midrash, in the Gemara, it's like a balabait. It's like a person who owns a home and he takes in an orphan. All of a sudden, he's providing for that orphan, but the orphan then grows up and he finds a way to make money himself. Now, once he makes money himself, what does he want to do? He wants to pay back the person who provided for him when he was poor. What does that sound like to everybody? Justice. Now, what are we learning? That justice and the Brit are very connected. Yes, it was the fact that Yosef would smear the Brit. But what gave him the ability to use the Shmirat Brit properly in his prayer was that he provided for Yaakov when he didn't have to. And that was justice. So because he provided for Yaakov, who's the concept of justice, now what happens to us is when you're Shmirat Brit, now you get the birthright. Now you get tefillah. Not just in a way that always gets answered, but that's in a way that's good for you and for everyone else. Like it's written in the Pasuk, that Yosef provided for his father and for his brothers, all according to the amount of little children that they had. That makes sense, right? It's like same thing in Kolel. You have a guy, he's got 6 children. You have another guy who's got 2 children. You're doing the same thing, right? So obviously it's a much bigger burden on the person who has 6 children. So usually they don't tell you they're doing this, but they're giving that person a little bit more than they're giving the other person. And that makes sense. He needs it more. And he's putting in more self-sacrifice to be learning in Kola. Okay, good. However, Rav Nachman is now teaching there's a very deep secret within this pasuk. And it's based on the entire Torah that we've learned so far. Because this word hataf, little children, is a very bizarre language to use. Just say for his brothers and their kids, their banim. Why are you saying hataf? They're little children. So the reason Rav Nachman says is because the word hataf comes from the lashon hatef. What does hatef mean? Hatef means to speak where the words are just easily flowing out of your mouth. So now let's bring that back into the pasuk, because that's amazing. Because now it's saying that Yosef, he provided for his father and for his brothers according to his hataf, meaning his ability to have the words flow out of his mouth. Why were they able to flow out of his mouth so easily? Because he was providing for them when he didn't have to. That's justice. Unbelievable what Rav Nachman's doing right now. And then to even add to it, and this is mamish amazing, that it doesn't just say hataf. Before that, it says lafiataf, which the Torah translates in the English translation as he gave them according to their number of little children. Because lafi can mean according to. But lafi literally means lafi, to the mouth. So listen to Rav Nachman saying, Yosef provided for his father and his brothers when he didn't have to. That's called justice. According to, no. Lafi, his mouth, lataf. And now his mouth was able to flow easily. So because Yisrael, even though they abandoned him, even though they threw him in a pit, even though they're the cause of all of his suffering, and he did not stop supporting them, and even more so when he had more influence. That was the ultimate justice. And this is very similar to Moshe Rabbeinu. And now what happens is, because he did that, when he comes to pray, because Joseph was near to bridge, we all know, between those things, lefiataf. Now his mouth hatef. his mouth had words flowing from them. We're not just everyone. And this is what happens when you give tzedakah before you pray. And this is the deep mystical reason why the Shulchan Aruch says it's a good idea to always give a few coins before you pray. Because by giving tzedakah, you have acquired the attribute of justice. And justice is what allows you to pray in a way that words flow out of your mouth and you don't struggle to speak. It's amazing. Amazing, 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 amazing. Natan lo Yaakov. And because he gave him tzedakah, meaning that Yosef supported his father, that's called tzedakah. It's justice to help somebody who yourself to enrich another person. And he gave it to his father Yaakov, who's the quality of justice. At the Bechor Shu Bechina Tefillah, Yaakov then gave him tefillah. Yaakov gave him the birthright. Required justice. And justice does not mean that you do according to what you think is the right thing to do, or you give according to what you think is the right part. I'm a nice guy, this guy's not. Justice means I see the good, I look deeply for the good in every, and I give tzedakah that I find. My good is greater than my good. You know, Rav Ginsburg teaches an amazing thing. What does it mean to be humble? What does it mean that Moshe was humble? Listen to this, it's amazing. He says, to be humble, to have shiflut, humility like Moshe Rabbeinu has, like David HaMelech had. What it means in essence is that that person truly believes that if anybody else had the same talent, the same charisma, the same koach as that person, as Moshe, as David, they would do a better job than they're doing at being that person. Do you understand that? That you get to such a level of humility that you think that if anybody in the world had my resources, no matter how hard I'm trying, no matter how much effort I'm putting in, no matter how much self-sacrificing I'm doing, even though it may look like nobody else is doing those things, that I really think that if anybody else had my position, had my influence, had my abilities, they would do a better job than me. And Rav Ginsburg said Moshe felt like that. That was why he was so humble. He felt that if anybody else had what Hashem gave him, they would have sacrificed more. They would have been a better leader. They would have been a better judge. And that's crazy. That's insane because it's not true. But for Moshe, it was true because he was humble. He was so humble that he understood that whatever he had, Hashem gave him. And if Hashem didn't give that to someone else and that's why they were struggling, it's because Hashem didn't give that to them. It's not on them. And therefore, your whole avoda has to always be look for the good. Look for the good because it's the only real thing. And when you give your tzedakah now before you pray, you're tapped into reality. And now that you're tapped into reality, which you weren't before you prayed because you just worked for 8 hours and pretended like you're a big shot, and now you're coming to your mincha with your friends, and all of a sudden you're coming to pray and you spend 4 hours on the phone, you know, trying to get people to buy your product and thinking that you're all hot stuff, or that you're a loser because you're not doing well. And all of a sudden Hashem says, reality check. Put a few coins in a push. Because you're going to realize today is just because I want to pray knowing that your money is not yours and nothing is yours. And everything is a free gift. Now, when you come to pray, you're going to pray not just in a way that gets answered, but you're going to pray in a way that's good for you and good for everyone around you. It's going to be coming from a place of humility. And that's why it says, I need daika. That Yaakov says, I am the one, I'm giving you Shechem. Meaning Yaakov saying, I'm giving it to you and nobody else, because only through justice can you get the birthright to feel the sword to transform your life and the lives of those around you. Only through the concept of justice. And Rav Nachman is saying you cannot experience justice unless you give tzedakah. Anybody have any questions? Ask me good questions. Come on, practical questions you could bring into your life. We just learned about tzedakah for the first time according to Rabbi Nachman. Very important topic.
Rabbi.
Yes.
By law, we have to know where tzedakah money is going. So
yes,
if we go and we see somebody, a bum who is outside, and we know that he's going to spend this money on medications and drugs and alcohol, or even...
How do you know that? How do you know that?
Well, you can see that he's smoking. You can see that he's bum. You can see that he's barely standing. He's drunk. That's number one. Number two, I mean, even if to a Jewish...
How do you know he's spending your money on those? Wait. How do you know he's spending the money you just gave him on alcohol?
Well,
how do you know he's not using someone else's money for that? And he's
you don't know.
You hear what I'm saying?
I understand. So technically what you're saying is...
We don't know.
Technically what you're saying is we, no matter what, whoever is coming up to us, we still have to give. So what happened to that law of you have to find out where your money is going?
So 1 second. I'm not saying you should give all your money to everyone you see. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just trying to make clear what the essence of tzedakah is. Tzedakah is a mechanism for humbling yourself.
Mm-hmm.
By realizing that the money you have is not yours, and the fact that you have it is only because Hashem gave it to you, and He actually only gave it to you so you can give it to someone else. Okay? Now, when you realize that, who should you give it to? What's the best person to give it to? That's another question. And Rav Nachman makes it very clear, the best person to give it to is to the tzaddik. Because he's going to explain elsewhere that, so to speak, when you give tzedakah, so think about what's the issue? Why are you not getting your prayers answered? We're saying because of a blemish of the Brit, which comes from wasted seed. So what is tzedakah? Tzedakah is the opposite of wasting seed. I'm using my seed, my money, my shefa, to use it for good. I didn't waste it. So Rav Nachman teaches, according to Kabbalah, that's why tzedakah rectifies the Brit. That's why you attain justice and you rectify the Brit through giving tzedakah. Because it is the opposite. Just like it goes in, that's how it goes out. You wasted seed, so you have to do the opposite to fix it. That is by giving tzedakah. Now, who should you give the tzedakah to? The answer is to the tzaddik. And by giving your tzedakah to the tzaddik, Rav Nachman says it's like planting seeds in the most fertile field. That you don't even have to think twice about throwing money that way, because you know it's going to give birth to tremendous fruits. Now, Rav Nachman is going to say in different Torahs how important it is to give tzedakah to the tzaddik, because by doing that, your soul, we're actually going to learn later on in this Torah, that what happens is when you give tzedakah to the tzaddik, so then your soul actually becomes encompassed within his soul. And now everything that he does, you're actually affected by it. When he learns, you're affected by it. When he prays, you're affected by it, even if you're not necessarily consciously in his thoughts. But because you're now a part of his soul, because you gave a part of yours by giving your money, which is also something that we have to discuss later, that your money is from the root of the same place that is the root of your soul. And that's why it's so hard to give money up, because it's actually coming from the same source as your own soul. And therefore, when you give money, it's literally like you're giving a piece of yourself. It's Mesirat Nefesh. So when you give that over to the tzaddik, then you actually become encompassed within his soul. So now everything he does, you get benefit for that.
So basically, the best answer is you better do it and pray that your money goes into the right tzaddik.
Yes. Beautiful, Michael. Very good. So what you should be doing, Rav Natan says, because of what we're learning, I mean, we have these two things. On the one hand, Rav Nachman's going to say elsewhere, you have to do your best you possibly can to give tzedakah to the tzaddik. But where he's going to say to the Talmid that, like, we doesn't have, and you're impoverishing yourself. So how do you know who it is? Rav Natan says there is no way to know. The only thing that you can do and that you need to do is in your Hibodedut, say to Hashem, I'm giving my money to this person or to this organization, to this tzaddik. My very best to get closer to you. And the tzaddik is teaching me the best way to come close to you is to give tzedakah, because that's going to allow me to rectify my brit, which is going to allow my prayers to get answered. So you can't know for sure. I actually had a question from someone else, I think a few weeks ago, one of my friends, a student here, and he said that there was a person that she found out that mom is struggling. Her husband was not helping at all. They had a lot of kids. She was raising them on her own. Should I give money to this person? Like any money? Because I don't know. Because Rav Nachman's saying that you have to give it to the right people, otherwise it's like wasted seed. So I don't want to give it to the wrong person, but I also see this person struggling, or they might be struggling. I said what I would do is I would give them, because it sounds like they're really struggling. And then I would go after I give it to them, or before I give it to them, and say, Hashem, please help make sure that this tzedakah is going for the right reasons and to the right person, to help a person who really needs it. And by doing that, Rav Kramer says, and Rav Natan says, that itself makes it work. That even if it wasn't supposed to be going to the right place, it becomes the right place because you asked Hashem to be included in it.
Question, Rabbi.
Yes.
Hello? So.
Yeah, go ahead. I hear you.
Yeah. What you said is very interesting. That you give tzedakah. It's not a tzaddik, but it's a family that's struggling. You give tzedakah and you say, I should make it that it should be the right person. But isn't it also will work even if you give to the wrong person and you say, Hashem, I'm giving this tzedakah, you make it that this tzedakah should make him to be the right person. And Hashem will activate that easily and make him also to be the right person at the end of the day, to make the end result good by just asking Hashem. Because you didn't act.
One second, I hear you. It sounds very good, and it's a very beautiful sentiment. But Rav Nachman never said that. Okay,
but
so I hear what you're saying.
I'm not trying to.
The thing is that. No, I hear you. But the thing is that the issue with thinking about it deep sometimes, and I naturally do that. I when I hear what you're saying right now, my heart is saying yes. My heart is saying yes. I love it. It's beautiful.
And not to go against these teachings, but I'm saying if you give, and you say
no. It's not about going against the teachings. Listen, one second. Rav Nachman says, and it's very important that we understand this as Jews. We need to know our limits. We need to know our limits, and most importantly, we need to know our limits in terms of consciousness. Meaning, where should I be spending my time trying to figure things out, and where should I not? Okay? There is a space that you can bring chishim, and how doesn't say anything like this throughout all of the Likutey Moharan. It's a concern, because then what happens is that's called not necessarily Hashem's justice. It's a hard mitzvah. Meaning what happens is you're a good person, and he knows that the only way to get you at this point is to make you think you're doing a mitzvah. So to have you come up with a chiddush like this, which is beautiful, and I'm with you, it sounds great. But Rav Nachman doesn't say that. And that would concern me, masking what you're saying, and then to say to people, you can give it to a person and just say. But what you could do for sure, and what you should do, is you should pray for that person who's struggling. And Rav Nachman says you have to do that. He says that in Torah Hay, that you have to pray for the person that you see that's struggling. That is what's going to help them. But to give tzedakah to a person who's not, and pray to Hashem that this should give them to help them, you could just do that in your tefillah. But when it comes to actually giving your tzedakah, you should pray to Hashem. You should give it to the person who is going to be spreading the most light. Yes, Benny. Yes.
We're saying that tzedakah, the whole point of tzedakah is to make us humble, right?
I'm not saying that's the essence of Rav Nachman saying.
Humble us, so that way when we're humbled, we're at a state of humbleness, and Hashem answers our prayers, quote unquote. He hears it, theoretically.
He hears it, and also we're going to pray for the right things. Both.
Right. So let me ask you this question. If a person, because you mentioned this earlier, a person makes parnasa, maybe he's only making parnasa because he has to give him tzedakah, correct? And that's how the whole world goes around.
That's
if a person live a luxurious lifestyle, is he withholding people, quote unquote, from their parnasa? It's a shkafic. I don't know. It's shkafa. I'm not exactly so sure, but out what we're learning right now, when a person's living a luxurious lifestyle, is that the opposite of him humbling himself? Because what he's really supposed to do is give, to the world. It's not necessarily for you, because I know in Rav Nachman's next couple of tours after, he says that parnasa only comes on the account of the wife, right? And he says that parnasa is really for the wife and children. Let's say, for example, let's say I was rich. B'ezrat Hashem, I should be rich. I want to give all my money to Tion and
Amen.
I was rich and I was using all that money for myself, my own pleasures. I like a nice car. I like to eat fancy food, 24 karat gold steaks, and all that stuff. Am I
gold steaks?
Yeah.
I haven't been in Queens long enough. You have to show me that spot. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So in
definitely not a Queens location.
That's because you can't afford it.
That's not. Anyway, so again, if I'm living a luxurious life for me, forget my wife and children right now. I know for them I'm supposed to give the whole world and do everything for them.
Right.
For me, if I go and I do drugs, or if I have all the cars in the world and I like this watch and that watch and this watch and this, am I quote unquote holding back from attaining this goal of speech or the brit? Am I still holding by the brit if I do such a thing, or is it called the pagam in the bris?
Rav Nachman says later on, there's a very famous tour of Rosh Hashanah that I can't wait to do with you guys. It's an amazing, 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 amazing tour. And he says that you should really only have one thought. You should really only ever have one thought. And if you have more than one thought, it's too many thoughts. What should the one thought be? Is this going to bring me closer to Hashem? That should be your one thought before you do anything. I'm hungry. I'm going to eat now. How many slices of pizza should I get? Well, if I eat 2, I'm going to be satiated and I'm not going to be tired because it was just enough. And that'll probably give me more energy to then do mitzvot and to go to the field and to talk to Hashem, to help another person and to be with my wife and to have quality time with my family. But I want to have 4 slices because it tastes so good. Okay. Now, when you make that choice, you don't realize that that's an important choice to make. And Rav Nachman saying that what should be the rationale for whatever you do in that, ask yourself this simple question. What is going to bring me closer to Hashem? And whatever is the answer, that's what you should do. So Benny's question, even though it's talking about the Brit and he's connecting it to all these different things that we spoke about in this Torah, I think just the better question and the more relevant question to each of us is, what was my thought going into it? Because the only thing that's good in your life is closeness with Hashem. That kirvat Elokim, closeness with Hashem, tovli, this is good for me. This is the only good that there is to be close to the source and the powerhouse and the power plant of existence. So your only thought needs to constantly be, which is very relieving, right? How many thoughts are we constantly besieged by? Oh, but what about this job? And where should I live? And what about this town? What about this girl? And what about this situation? And what about this relationship? And a whole host of Nachman says, you don't have to think about any of that. You don't have to think about any of those things. You don't have to plan. You don't have to do anything. All you have to ask yourself, what can I do right now that's going to bring me closer to it? That's all you have to do. Now, the person who's buying the watches and the cars and the houses, he needs to ask himself a simple question. Why am I doing that? If the answer is because I want to be closer, and if that's the honest truth, in some way, okay, shkoach.
That person for sure is himself.
If,
he needs 4 Rolexes. He needs one. You need one to tell time. You don't need 4 different. There's no 4 different time zones.
Okay, look, Benny, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying in the end, you have to ask that question to yourself. Why am I doing this right now? Some people, right, like the Baal Shem Tov, he used to dress up in different ways so that he can meet a person where he's at. So there is a mitzvah like that. There's a reality like that. So let's say you have a guy whose mom is undercover. He is dressing up like he is wealthy, looking nice.
We can't hear you, Rabbi Kalmus. You're cutting in and out.
Told you it wasn't just me having him in and out.
You were right. I'm sorry.
All right, I'm in my. No. Let me move around. You could tell me when you can start to hear me, and I'm not cutting in and out.
You were good a second ago.
Good? Okay. So we're going to end the class in this very bizarre
I don't think it works like a satellite dish.
Can anybody hear him?
You mean my hat is not a satellite dish, so I should take it off then, because that's why I was wearing it. That was the whole point.
Oh, no, keep it up.
Okay. So the answer is like this. If that person is mamish, can go to the field, he can cry to Hashem and say to Hashem, I only have this fake golden can because I want to connect to other people. So then it's a beautiful thing. It's an amazing thing to do. But if you're attending beach bum tanning salons and it's not because you want to go down to the deepest depths of darkness to lift up souls, and it's because you think you look better with a tan, so that's not called I want to be close to Hashem in that moment, okay? So I would focus more on that versus how is this affecting the Brit? I'd just be more focused on where are my priorities in life. And my priorities in life, if my prayers not just are going to be effective, but if they're going to help people, they need to come from humility. And humility really means I want to be close to Hashem and like at all costs. So everybody needs to be honest with himself and ask himself that question. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Before we go back to you, Benny. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, if someone is asking for tzedakah, let's say, and you are worried that perhaps it is not the best source, would it be permissible to not give them money, but instead to pledge maybe like whatever you wanted to give them, but give it to a healthy source, but in their zchut, as a source of tzedakah, so to speak, but like to give that person the zchut and to give that person a blessing? Would that be a permissible way of like helping someone who wants tzedakah but be able to give it in a kosher way?
I like that. And you give it to the tzaddik,
but in their name.
Honor the person who you see you struggling. I think that's very, very nice. That's a nice chiddush.
Thank you.
Obviously, you give a few bucks, to a person you see struggling, they ask you for help. Also, people see you. You look Jewish. You have a kippah. Whatever. And I had a woman, very whatever. I'm not gonna say. It's gonna get me in trouble. But anyway,
Is he frozen for anyone else?
He's definitely frozen, right?
Yes, it's frozen. The whole, I don't know. It's just,
am I frozen? I'm
I don't know,
so
frozen.
sorry.
Can't hear you.
I am
You're good now, but
okay. So now I'm on my staircase and I'm moving this around. And I'm very dead. Wow, this is gonna be a very terrible ending to this class. Okay, you can hear?
Got the woman what?
Okay, so the answer is like this. This woman said, "Hey Jew," not "Hey you," but "Hey Jew, Jew." And I turned around and said, "Hey, what's up?" So they said, "You have money for me?" and I saw, I look like, I have a hat and I wear black and white and I'm the only Jewish person on the street. And I see everybody's watching because she just called me a Jew. She asked me for money. So I said to Hashem, I said, "Please, Hashem, help this to be a kiddush Hashem, that people are seeing me, I'm giving this person money, and help that it should be good for her." I didn't give her a substantial sum. I gave her a little bit. But the real question is not the little bit. The real question is the substantial sum of money that I'm giving for Maaser, for Tzedakah. Where is that going? And the answer is that should mamish be going to the Tzaddik Yisod Olam. Because by doing that, you are planting it in a completely fertile field. Does the Rabbi hold that 10% is enough? 10% is the minimum depending on your income. If you can't support your family, then it's a question if you should be giving tzedakah at all. But we're going to learn elsewhere is that tzedakah doesn't just have to be physical money. If you don't have the money, even though lahatchila, that's the best case, so you should be praying to Hashem to have enough to give to tzedakah. But let's say you don't. So by you spreading the teachings of the tzaddik to others and giving them a chance to connect to his wisdom, so you achieve the same purpose as tzedakah. Why? Because what is he going to do with your tzedakah? He's going to use it to further his reach to reveal godliness in the world. So you, if you don't have money, you can do your part by doing that, right? So 10% is the minimum according to halakha. That's when you have an income that allows you to do that. If you don't, so seemingly you can support the tzaddik by bringing people to his classes or by spreading his wisdom, and also by doing his ratzon. Now that's weird, it doesn't sound like giving tzedakah, but we're going to learn elsewhere it's also similar, that in a sense, by giving yourself over to someone who knows more than you, you're also achieving humility through that. Because the tzaddik's telling you do this, you're saying that doesn't make sense, but you do it anyway, that's very humbling. So it's also achieving the effect of the tzedakah. Correct?
Rabbi, question.
Yes.
Two things. I think it's the best when you could have a card, and when somebody asks you for tzedakah, and when you give to an organization like Tzion, if you could move your head, I could see the organization name. Tzion Breslov, yes. I'm just kidding. So if we could give that, and then we could ask,
I'm going to bring you the
card to a person, give a card to a person, and say, this is the organization could help you. So this way, it's just not giving the money to a person. You could give them the derech, and by giving
100%.
That's derech.
All the more so.
And you can, make a star to give a breakdown how much tzedakah should be given, who to give it to, who not to give it to, what's the best thing.
You should do that.
It would be great for people because conversation and teachings are good, but people tend to forget, even myself. And the best would be if to be written and given to people so they have it like a reminder what to follow. I think it would be great. And then if you get a card and to say, here's the organization that we're supporting, and you asked me tzedakah, here's the card for you. Reach out to them, and then not only they'll get money from the organization, but they also will get a derech what to go, what to do with their lives. So you are actually achieving money.
I hear you. Yeah, so that's also good. All those things are good. If you're able to do all those things, that's even better. Okay. Any other questions? Someone who hasn't asked the question yet.
Alex has a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Shalom, Rabbi. Quick question. I want to get your opinion on it. The Alter Rebbe in his Tanya says that the way to receive Shefa without getting affected by the Klipot is by giving tzedakah. Has the Rabbi heard of this concept?
So the reason is because it fixes the Brit. And when a person is Shmirat HaBrit, he's not affected by the Klipot. So the two points meet. Often within Chassidut, you'll have, and even in the Torah, you'll have two different things saying, or two different rabbis, big tzaddikim saying different things, and usually they actually meet in the same place. It's just different aspects of one thing.
Okay, I love that. Great, perfect. That's all I wanted to ask.
Okay, good. Any other last questions? Nope. Okay.
I think there's a question.
Wait,
in
no,
the
no,
chat.
no. Wait. The 2-minute drill was sponsored by Zion Breslev Institute. So, yeah. Run by, I don't know, in the leadership of Rabbi David Yisrael Kalmus Shlita. Zchut Ragen Aleinu, Zchut Rabbeinu, Val Kol Yisrael. So 2-minute drill, please give us like a sum. Sorry, and then I don't know, do the chat question before or after, I don't know.
Okay, so 2-minute summary. You ready?
Not do 2 minutes. Do it. You can do it to like less, but just everything.
Yeah, no, I got it. It's like 2-minute drill. Okay.
Yes.
It's like this. Drill. Like this. You have a weapon which is messianic. It's called your mouth. But your ability to access that messianic weapon within you, meaning the ability to transform reality, which you can do with your mouth, you can only access that weapon by becoming Shmirat HaBrit. The Brit unlocks the mouth. But the only way to become Shmirat HaBrit is to give tzedakah to a tzaddik. And by giving tzedakah to a tzaddik, then what happens is you acquire the quality of justice. And justice is what allows you not only to get your prayers answered, which is what the Brit does when you're Shmirat HaBrit, all your prayers get answered. But on top of that, you pray for the right things that are good for you and good for everyone around you. There's your 2-minute drill. Okay?
Sweet. Sweeter than honey. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else before we head off for the week? Yes, Benny.
It's not a question, it's more of a statement. You mentioned earlier about a person who ran an orphan, right? And he's basically, the orphan pays him back later in life. So I don't know, it's like something that's been hitting my head since you said it, that if you guys notice, Baal Shem Tov, who's the founder of Chassidus, and Rav Nachman, they were both orphans. And I feel like part of the reason why we, and not just us, but everybody who's a part of Chassidus, is because a part of their Chassidus is that they were orphaned from Hashem.
Benu was an orphan? I don't know. Yeah? I didn't know that.
Yeah, his father and mother.
So I don't know if Rav Nachman's parents passed away when he was young, but he was emotionally, in the sense, an orphan because he was disassociated from friends and from family because he was different. I don't know if that's what Benny was going for, or he was trying to say just like the Baal Shem Tov's parents passed away when he was young.
Also, like his own children.
Right, he lost.
Why people are so into Chassidus, and we know that Chassidus is the panemius of things, as opposed to the other world is like the more extraneous. more external, like laws and this and going back and forth and all that. I feel like the whole story really of Hashem when He made the Torah and all the way till now, this concept called orphan. You got what I'm saying? I feel like we're all just left.
I tell you why. Because orphan, or is light, and fin is like infinite. That's what you mean. That's orphan, like infinite light. That's the orphan.
I think Benny and Abraham have to do a sitcom together where they talk out different about golden stakes and orphans.
No, we're going to talk about Adam and Chava. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be called Adam and Eve.
Okay. You guys should do a podcast.
Benny, podcast. I hear what you're saying, Benny. I hear what you're saying. So there is, we know that our generation, according to the Arizal, we are the generation that has been reincarnated many, many, many times over, and we were the generation that was in the desert that didn't make it out. So I don't hear you, Benny. It looks like you're singing rap lyrics, but we can't hear you. Nobody can hear you. Sorry. Maybe you can type it in. But I think the answer is that yes, in our generation, we are all. I've been here 26 times. Okay, good. You're talking about the class? Okay. So the truth.
Isn't it like 3 max? The Gilgulim, isn't it like three times in a person? No.
So we're getting into complicated stuff because there's sparks of souls, but whatever. The truth is, according to the Rizal, that this generation has been in the time of Noah. It was again in the time of the Mabul. It was in time. It was in time of the dispersion. It was in the time of Mitzrayim. So, and that in the end, that generation was gonna, just like Moshe Rabbeinu was praying to bring them into the land of Israel. The real reason why he died then and didn't bring them in was because they weren't ready. So because they weren't ready, and Moshe wanted to bring them in because he took out. So Hashem actually did a huge kindness to us and also to Moshe, that he actually, we all died in the desert. And as a result of that, Moshe is able to take us in at the end, just like he wanted to in the beginning. And therefore, in a way, we are all orphans. So, but thank God we have Moshe, we have the Tzaddik, and now we just have to put our mind and our heart and our courage together and to go all the way. Thank you so much, guys. Have an amazing, amazing Shabbat, mamash, the happiest Shabbat, and so much blessings and joy and peace and happiness and connection, and that you should have mamish chidushim from Shemayim and that clarity and things that you didn't think about, and should bring closer to Hashem and closer to the Tzaddik, closer to the Torah, and closer to your real self. Okay, everybody have a beautiful, beautiful Shabbat. I'll see you guys someday.